things that you may not be able to see at first glance. So when she came to the WNBA, just a lack of preparedness by the commissioner, lack of marketing. She really shines a light on it. And then the lack of travel. Then the women's Olympic movement was absurd, not putting her on the team. Christine Brennan wrote about that in her book. And then we've also noticed that the players were very petty, although I think they're getting over it. But Caitlin Clark has really shined a light on how bad the officiating is. It's not bad calls, it's no calls.
What if the person destined to save a struggling sports league was being systematically dismantled by the very institution she was supposed to rescue? The arrival of Caitlin Clark was meant to be the fairy tale ending the WNBA had been waiting for. A guaranteed gold rush of television ratings, sold out arenas, and mainstream relevance. On the surface, the fairy tale seemed to be coming true, but behind the curtain of record-breaking merchandise sales and unprecedented media attention, a much darker and more disturbing story is unfolding. It's a story of shocking incompetence, deep-seated jealousy, and a league that seems utterly incapable or perhaps unwilling to protect its own golden goose. For months, the problems were just whispers among dedicated fans, but now those whispers have turned into a deafening roar as powerful voices in the mainstream media finally begin to expose the shocking failures happening in plain sight.
He does not. He always kind of calls out fans for always trying to blame refs and complain about them. Like he has always supported that side and has talked about it's really hard to officiate and there's so many more video angles now that of course you're going to see bad calls and whatnot, that it is what it is. And so the fact that he's pretty much saying like this is awful, that's massive.
The dam of silence finally burst when Colin Cowherd, a national sports media personality who typically defends league officials and tells fans to stop complaining, unleashed one of the most brutal and honest takedowns of WNBA leadership ever witnessed. This wasn't just another critic looking for clicks. This was a fundamental shift in the narrative. Cowherd is an establishment voice, a man who understands the business of sports, and for him to sound the alarm so loudly signifies a crisis that can no longer be ignored. He placed Commissioner CATHY Engelbert directly in his crosshairs, not just criticizing a few bad calls, but dissecting a systemic rot of mismanagement that has left the league's biggest star vulnerable, battered, and exposed. He painted a picture not of a thriving professional organization, but of an amateur operation completely overwhelmed and unprepared for the spotlight. For those who have been paying attention, his words weren't a revelation, they were a long overdue public validation of a disaster everyone could see coming.
As I was watching the All-Star game, I was on another TV, I was watching Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. So I've compared her to Michael Jordan, not stylistically, obviously, but in merchandise sales, kind of a dynastic TV rating changer. And in year one, like you just were like, wow, nobody plays like that. And then in year two, Michael Jordan got hurt. And then in year two for Caitlin Clark, she's getting banged up and hurt. Why did MJ always get hurt early? Because they were tackling him. Nobody knew how to stop him. And the WNBA officiating is just changed. Like it was always a physical league. Now it's insane. So last night she gets hurt again and she's in a shooting slump. And I think a lot of it is she's banged up in year two, like Michael Jordan. And Michael was fighting to come back and she's fighting to come back and she re-injured a groin. So she's still scoring and still a team leader and assists, but she's been banged up. And, you know, by the way, her brother went to social media last night. No lies told. Colin Clark said, make no mistake, this is on the reffing. And even Stephanie White, Fever coach, has noticed it.
Cowherd's most powerful and chilling point was a direct comparison to history. He likened Caitlin Clark's brutal welcome to the league to Michael Jordan's second year in the NBA. Back then, teams like the Detroit Pistons implemented the infamous Jordan rules, a strategy that basically amounted to, if you can't stop him with skill, stop him with force. Jordan was tackled, cheap-shotted, and physically punished every time he drove to the basket. But here's the crucial difference. The NBA, under Commissioner David Stern, eventually recognized that allowing its brightest star to be bludgeoned was bad for business. The league adapted. It cracked down on the overt physicality and learned to protect its assets, understanding that the health of its superstars was essential for the growth and survival of the entire enterprise.
Players get kneed in the stomach with no consequences.
league. The officiating is horrible. Listen to this. There's only 179 active players in the league. Players have already suffered 141 injuries since opening day. It's like one per player. There have been 57 head and neck injuries in the past 2.5 seasons. They just don't call anything. They don't call anything. And like the NBA, they allow more physical play in the playoffs. But this is a regular season. You want your stars in the WNBA, you want them healthy for the All-Star game. You want them healthy for the playoffs. You don't want them banged up now.
The WNBA, it seems, has learned nothing from this historical blueprint. They are allowing a modern version of the Jordan rules to be implemented on Clark night after night. Instead of adjusting the officiating to protect their generational talent, the league has allowed defenders to resort to blatant shoulder checks, hip checks, and aggressive non-basketball plays, all under the flimsy excuse of welcome to the league physicality. It's a dangerous and reckless approach, a blueprint for abuse that is playing out in real time. The league isn't just watching it happen, its inaction is actively enabling it. What happened to Jordan was a test of a league's resolve. What's happening to Clark is a display of a league's stunning negligence.
So insane. And I disagree with what Colin said, though, where he's like, oh, the pettiness is no longer there. No, it is. No, it is. And this is where the WNBA is so infuriating. It's so ridiculous. Because now Caitlin Clark is not going to be in the three-point contest or the All-Star game. Nobody's going to care about All-Star Weekend now. They're going to still try to pretend like it's this big thing and, oh, the views were so high, there's that, because of what Caitlin Clark has already brought into the WNBA. Yes, that's why. That's why. They'll try to pretend and they'll try to sell it as, no, everything's just great, regardless of Caitlin Clark, but it is this is a massive loss.
The catastrophic consequences of this negligence are written in black and white in the league's own injury report, and the numbers are beyond alarming. In a professional sports league with only 179 active players, there have been a jaw-dropping 141 injuries since opening day. Let that number sink in. That's almost one injury for every single player in the league. This isn't a contact sport, it's a war of attrition. Even more disturbing is the statistic that reveals 57 head and neck injuries have occurred over the past 2.5 seasons. We aren't talking about sprained ankles or jammed fingers. We're talking about dangerous, potentially career-altering injuries happening at an epidemic rate. This is not the normal wear and tear of a competitive season. This is a direct result of a league that has fundamentally failed in its duty of care, creating an environment where players are not adequately protected. This crisis lies squarely at the feet of Commissioner Engelbert, who has presided over this breakdown of player safety with a deafening public silence. Caitlin Clark's arrival has been perfectly described as a black light being switched on in a filthy hotel room. She isn't creating the problems. Her intense, blinding stardom is simply illuminating all the disgusting messes that have been festering in the dark for years. Suddenly, the entire world can see the WNBA's deep-seated institutional flaws in high definition, the shockingly inconsistent and often incompetent officiating, the second-rate travel accommodations that see players navigating commercial airports while their NBA counterparts fly private, the amateur level marketing that fumbled the promotion of its biggest star, and perhaps most damagingly, a toxic culture of petty jealousy among veteran players who seem to resent the very person who is raising their salaries and selling out their arenas. For decades, these problems were the WNBA's quiet little secrets, hidden in the shadows of niche sports coverage. But now, with millions of new eyes on the product, the league's ugly truths are being exposed, revealing an organization that appears fundamentally broken from the inside out. Perhaps no single event better captures the league's stunning, self-sabotaging nature than the decision to leave Caitlin Clark off the 2024 Olympic team. It was a move so baffling, so profoundly illogical from a business and marketing perspective that it can only be described as a complete betrayal of the sport's potential. At a moment when women's basketball had a once-in-a-generation opportunity to capture a massive global audience, the decision-makers, heavily influenced by the league's internal politics, chose pettiness over progress. They hid behind flimsy excuses of chemistry and experience, ignoring the fact that Clark is the single biggest draw in women's basketball history. They had the most famous and marketable female athlete on the planet in their hands and decided to leave her at home. It was a colossal failure of leadership and a clear, undeniable signal that the league's old guard would rather maintain its cliquey control than embrace a future of unprecedented growth. The root cause of the on-court chaos and the rampant physical abuse can be traced back to one shocking, almost unbelievable fact. WNBA referees are paid as little as $180 per game. That's less than what many top-tier college referees make, and in some cases, less than what officials at major high school tournaments earn. The old adage has never been more true: you get what you pay for, and the WNBA has clearly decided that its on-court product is only worth discount-level officiating. This isn't just about a few blown calls. This is about a fundamental lack of talent, experience, and authority on the floor. When officials are underpaid and undertrained, they lack the confidence and credibility to make the tough, game-altering calls needed to protect players from targeted aggression. This fosters a lawless environment where physicality escalates beyond the rules, and star players like Clark are left to fend for themselves against a nightly onslaught. It's an amateur hour setup for a league desperately trying to convince the world it's a major professional enterprise. Ultimately, all of these individual failures, the injuries, the Olympic snub, the officiating crisis, point back to one central problem: a catastrophic failure of leadership at the highest level. As Colin Cowherd so bluntly stated, the WNBA has no playbook for handling a superstar. Think about the stunning incompetence that statement implies. Decades into its existence, after seeing superstars come and go, the league is still figuring out the absolute basics of sports marketing and asset protection. The NFL created an entire slate of rules to protect quarterbacks like Tom Brady. The NBA adapted its officiating to shield shooters like Steph Curry and drivers like LeBron James from excessive contact. Competent, forward-thinking leagues understand that their superstars are not just players. They are the engines of the entire business. Yet the WNBA, under CATHY Engelbert's watch, seems content to let its most powerful engine get treated like a human piñata, all while offering nothing but empty platitudes and public silence. This isn't a learning curve, it is a shocking display of institutional incompetence. This leadership vacuum has allowed a toxic culture of jealousy to fester among the league's veteran players. Instead of celebrating the Caitlin Clark effect and the financial tide that is lifting all their boats, a vocal minority of players has responded with cheap shots on the court and passive-aggressive comments off of it. This isn't the tough but respectful competition you see in other professional leagues. It's a destructive, counterproductive hazing ritual. A strong commissioner would have addressed this immediately. They would have sent a clear message, through public statements and private memos, that the league will not tolerate actions that undermine its own growth and harm its public image. Instead, Engelbert's silence has been interpreted as tacit approval, allowing the narrative of a petty and unwelcoming league to take hold. The WNBA is now at a terrifying and pivotal crossroads. The stress test that Caitlin Clark's arrival initiated is causing system-wide failures in every department. The officiating is broken, the player safety standards are a complete joke, the marketing strategy is non-existent, and the leadership appears to be asleep at the wheel. The constant escalating criticism from powerful mainstream voices like Colin Cowherd is no longer just background noise. It is a ticking clock, counting down to a moment of reckoning. The question is no longer about whether Caitlin Clark can save the WNBA. The real urgent question is whether